Welcome back to Families in Action, brought to you on your hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS. If you're just joining us, we are talking about drugs. Specifically, we don't always talk about drugs specifically on this show, but today we are, because we just want to highlight sort of, we, I think, as people that work in drug treatment and law enforcement and different aspects that are trying to curb the problems, we get focused on one particular drug, I think, and sort of
we don't.
Well, we don't, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like all anybody talked about for a long time was heroin. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is heroin necessarily wasn't specifically the problem. It was all the opiates, right?
Yeah, so you got pills, kills, heroin, symposiums all over the place. But you're right. It was opiates, period.
Right, opiates. And we forget.
And by the way, opiate, when it comes to that, pills kill more people than heroin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we sort of... if our focus isn't on all the drugs specific, generally, then we start to focus on one specific drugs. We think that the other ones have gone away, and that's not the truth. And what I've gotten recently is a lot of articles.
I'm trying to figure out what drug has went away.
Well,
Can you think of any?
Let's see.
I was watching the news today.
I wanted to say PCP, but I think people are still smoking PCP.
No, it's still there. I was watching the news today, and they were talking about Bill Cosby, right?
Right.
And Quaaludes, they went away. You know why they went away?
Yeah, well,
because they were taken off the market because the whole society was addicted to it.
Yeah, the only drugs that I've seen that do go away are the ones that are manufactured by pharmaceutical companies, right?
Exactly.
And then they stop producing those specific drugs, like Reds, like the old Reds or Yellows or all that.
But then things change. Right. They just go from Quaaludes to Soma,
it becomes
or
something,
Oxy,
right,
or whatever it is. So it's not that they really went away; they just switch. But drugs don't just go away; they take a back seat sometimes to other drugs. But what happens is, it's kind of like a carousel, like a merry-go-round. It's opiates now, then it's crystal meth.
It's almost about a 20-year cycle. I don't think it's exactly 20 years, but I think it's about a 20-year cycle.
You're right.
And they see that. I mean, one of the telltale signs is right now the drug busts on the borders, because almost everything that comes into, especially California, comes across the border of Mexico.
Right.
Almost everything, other than the ones that are manufactured in pharmaceutical laboratories.
Which, by the way, crystal meth is pretty much can be made anywhere in a van down the street.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it's so easy and cheap to make that cartels and things like that have picked up on it and are making huge batches, right. And so they're starting to see a rise in the amount of methamphetamine that they're busting coming across the border, which is an indication. I mean, you think about it from a let's take something like Walmart, for instance, right, or Starbucks. If you put 3 Walmarts in every town, people are going to shop at Walmart because it's convenient, it's right there, it's cheaper than anything else, and all the other stores that are like that particular store are going to start to go out of business.
Right.
Well, drugs are no different than that. If you put 10 pounds of methamphetamine in 3 different spots in every town, right, then it's going to be out there, it's easy to get, it's convenient, it's going to be competition for the other drugs, and that's kind of what's happening with methamphetamine right now.
Yeah.
It's being flooded into the United States, well, into California especially, but into the United States again, the same way that heroin is being flooded into the United States.
It's the new cocaine. It's the cheap cocaine. Even though I say that, and the other breath I'm going to say, but cocaine is huge right now.
It's never gone. Yeah, cocaine's never gone away.
But it's making a huge not comeback. What's the word I like to use? It's definitely more than it's been.
Right, like a resurgence or something, right?
Exactly. It's out there, and it's out there. It came back with a vengeance. How's that?
So where does it all, we know in drug treatment, we can spend a whole lot of time doing what like not in drug treatment, but law enforcement is a great, keep doing the bus, keep raiding the houses, keep busting people going across the border. But I tell you what, if there was
special props to our sheriff's department and
Absolutely.
The J team up here in Santa Clarita.
Keep doing what you're doing and getting it off of the streets and the drug take-backs and all that different stuff. Get as much of that stuff off the streets as you possibly can. But we know in drug treatment that if we start looking at the need for it, Like, let's take away the people who need it, who want it, And if there's no...
Hollywood, I'm going to just give you an example. In the old days, I lived in Hollywood, right? And you could drive down, what was the name? I don't remember the name of the street, right off of Sunset.
Okay.
And as soon as you drove down the street, you get attacked by drug dealers. Right. They come running to your car, and they try to sell you pot or speed or whatever it was. Remember that?
Yeah, you could do it right here in the valley.
And then the police would come and they'd arrest that person. But 10 minutes later, there was somebody else doing the same thing. Right. So you're never going to get rid of the drugs. You're never going to get rid of the dealers. The only way we're going to win this war and have an impact is by getting rid of the need.
Right.
And we'll talk about that when we come back from break, Bob.
This is Families in Action, brought to you on our hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS. Welcome back to Families in Action, brought to you on our hometown station, AM 1220, KHTS. If you're just joining us, we're talking about drugs and their availability, and, but the bottom line is if people are healthy enough not to desire using the drugs or get out of control with the drugs, then, it doesn't matter how much is coming into the United States. I mean, of course it matters, but, if the need is not there. The question I want to ask you, Cary, and I can jump in on this as well, but where does it all start? Where do we need to begin to cut through the need for it, the so-called need for it?
The problem is this. We have, follow me. And by the way, if you guys want to join from the outside, if you want to join this conversation,
call us,
feel
please.
free to call 298-5487. That's 298-5487, 298-KHTS. But here's the deal. The drugs are never going to go away. I kind of lost my thought where I wanted to go. But drugs are never going to go. We know that.
Right.
And here's what's scary. I know where I was going. There's 3 types of kids. Let's put kids in categories, okay?
Okay.
Category number 1. No matter what kind of a parent you guys are, they're level-headed children. They're not going to engage in high-risk behaviors. They don't want to deal with drugs. They stay away from that as much as they can, and they just take care of business, right? There are kids that do that.
I think that's a good number of kids.
Yeah, I think it's a large number of kids. Here's the smaller number. The next category is the least amount of kids. And these are kids that are high-risk kids, period. They're going to engage in high-risk behavior, be it drugs, fighting, driving too fast, stealing, whatever the deal is. No matter what you do, they're just going to do that. So those kids really need high maintenance, and we really need to stay on top of them until they get to some kind of maturity, if they ever do.
Right.
But remember, that's the smallest category of children there is. The next category, I believe, is the largest category. And this category are kids that you would call fence takers. Fence sitters.
Yeah, they can go either way.
They can go either way,
right?
With all those, all those corny sayings, families that eat together, families that stay together, families that play together, families that pray together.
All that stuff. It makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. So those kids with a lot of parental involvement really do okay.
And again, that's the great majority of kids right there. The great majority.
Now, with a lack of parental involvement,
or parental involvement that's not healthy.
Or a parental involvement that's not healthy.
Right.
These children now all of a sudden have all this peer pressure. And what did we just say? Those are fence sitters, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to go which way the tide takes them. The scariest part of that is 20 years ago, think about this. Little Johnny would go to school and come home. There'd be mom with milk and cookies or something like that. In most homes, if there's even a mom and dad living together, they're both at work. Now with social media and all that stuff, the peer pressure is times 100 than it ever was.
Well, and I think 20 years ago, if you would have asked a kid, what's the biggest influence in your life and what's the most important thing in your life, every single one of them, with a few exceptions, would have said my parents, my mom, my dad, my older brother or sister or whoever, right? Those are my heroes. Those are my role models.
Right.
Today, you ask that same question to kids, and what are they going to say, Cary?
My friends.
They're going to say my friends, or they're going to say those role models
and ask yourself,
that are not so healthy. Right?
And parents, ask yourself this. What is the last thing your child does before he or she goes to sleep every night? The very last thing. The answer is pretty simple.
Yeah.
What is it, Bob?
They're checking their phone. They're checking their social media.
Yeah, their snaps, their Twitters and all that stuff. What is the first thing your kids do when they wake up before they brush their restroom?
Yeah, that's right. First thing
they check their social media. Yeah. So that means that peer pressure today is different and stronger than it has ever been before. That means those fence sitter kids that are the largest group are really in trouble.
Well, and by the way, parents, we are models for our children. So for some of us, and I find myself guilty at times, that's the first thing I'm doing in the morning too, is maybe not Facebook, but checking my phone, checking my emails, checking my stuff before I sit down and start the day, with a conversation with my kids.
If you go to a restaurant, you're with your children, and you're checking your Facebook, shame on you. Right. Number one. Number two, hey, I don't want you drinking, honey. And then you go and you get a margarita or whatever it is you're getting. Do what I say, not what I do doesn't work. You can't smoke and you light up a cigarette. Not really good. So I guess where I'm going is, if you want your kids to do what you want them to do, be the role model and example that you want for your kids.
Well, and remember, for the vast
part of being a parent.
For the vast majority of kids, they are those ones that can go either way.
Of course.
Society and their friends and their parents are a great influence on these kids, and it can go either way. And you are continue to be the biggest difference in their life.
The average parent in this country.
I hate to hear this, but it's
average
true.
The average parent spends between 2 and 5 minutes. I used to say 2 and 5 minutes.
10's a long time.
Yeah, talking and listening to their child, when their child spends 16 plus hours a day talking to their friends.
Right.
So where do you think those fence sitters are having the biggest problem? And we're talking, you were saying before we went on break, that it's hard to stay away from peer pressure, especially in school right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. Do you want to jump into this?
Well, I just think...
I mean, you're a little younger than us.
Peer pressure is very real. And it's important that our parents give their children the proper support system, and like Cary and Bob always preach, it's about talking to them, actually talking actively, not talking at them, talking to them, and allowing them to be open with you, share an open-minded house, things like that.
Yeah,
and actually listening to your kids, because in this we're all guilty of. When it comes to dealing with our children, when it comes to arguments, the only reason we're arguing is because we want them to understand and believe what we want them to understand and believe, when they probably will never. So just state facts and listen, and, that's all you can do.
Well, I tell you what, parents, you want to see something scary, and you may already know this, right? If you are not having those conversations with your kids, I want you to try something. Go online and just type in marijuana, or type in cannabis, and see what comes up online. Most of what you're going to find on the internet regarding that particular drug and some other drugs is going to be, it's good for you, it's not a big deal. There's even going to be claims that it cures cancer. Those are all not true, but if you're letting your kids find the answers for themselves in terms of some of the drugs and other things, that's what they're going to find. You want to try another experiment that's even scarier?
By the way,
type in porn, right?
Yeah, porn, yeah.
But see what comes up for your kids.
But by the way, that's the biggest argument we have with kids. That's the biggest fight as treatment people, is explaining the dangers of marijuana to people that are getting clean, because they really did. They almost brainwashed that it's healthy and good for you. And now we have to kind of give them information that kind of challenges their belief systems. And again, I think every kid that I met over the age of 11 or 12 has a cell phone.
Yeah, everybody's got it.
It's just the way it is. And if you pick up your phone and you hit your Google button and say porn, there's going to be up to 500,000 free sites that will pop up with the most hardcore sexual activities that you could imagine.
Yeah, and if you're not having the conversations with your kids about what healthy sexual practices look like, or if you're not having the conversations about what the dangers are of the various drugs and sexual stuff and everything, then they're going to find that information anyway, and guess where they're going to find it? You can type it in and see. And they don't even have
Type it in. Porn.
Even the kids, the younger kids who don't have cell phones, they have like these, like the iPod or whatever. There's no phone attached to it, but you still get internet stuff. If you got a Wi-Fi, you can get Facebook. You can get all that stuff. So it's the same thing. They are connected to the virtual world out there, all over the world. So
it's really very frightening. And I really suggest to parents, you do exactly what Bob said. Get on the internet, Google all the drugs so you can really get the right information so you're educated and you have the knowledge to talk to your kids. Google porn. See what's going on there so that you won't be afraid to talk to your kids about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And by the way, if you're too embarrassed or ashamed to talk to your kids about sex or drugs, you really shouldn't even be a parent.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're adult enough to have a child, you better be adult enough to have those kind of heavy conversations that your kids need to hear from you. This is Families in Action on our local hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS, going on break.